Hello, and welcome to the BUS 125 Business English Lecture on Possessives. I'm taking the time to do this lecture as I feel possessives can be a little bit complicated, particularly when they're combined with the plural section. And on your upcoming exam, the two will be combined together. And so if we really get plurals down, which was pretty straightforward, and so I'll let you read about that, but really focus now on possessives, I think you can get your arms around when the two of these are used together. So let's get started. What we're going to do is learn the basic rules of forming the possessive nouns and really understand the difference between when we form possessives of a singular noun versus a plural noun. And we want to know how to form possessives in what I call some complex situations. And if we can master these rules, we can eliminate our mistakes when forming possessives. Here we go. You know, possessives simply mean it's usually one noun owning another noun. So in the case of the hat of the man, we could say the man's hat, the leash of the dog's leash, the uniform of the waitress's uniform, and that's W-A-I-T-R-E-S-S'. The games of the children's games. Blah, blah, blah. Recipe of my sister-in-law's recipe. And then the faces of the girls would be the girls, G-I-R-L-S', faces. Hopefully all that made sense. I encourage you to stay for the rest of the lecture so you can understand working with these possessives in complex situations. But normally when we have possession, it's because it's one noun, in this case the man, owning another noun, the hat. Here we go. The basic rule for possessives is this. A possessive noun always has an apostrophe, always. And so let's take a look at how this works. Let's say you have a singular noun, like in the case of the word woman, and we're talking about one woman. The rule is to simply add an apostrophe S, like woman's. You know, we almost always just add an apostrophe S. There's only one situation where we don't, and that's the last one. Let's say the singular noun ends in S. We still add an apostrophe S. Let's say the woman was a waitress. Then we would have waitress, apostrophe S, such as the waitress's order. Waitress's order. Let's say we have a plural noun that doesn't end in S, and you might say, what, do we have any of those? Of course we do. What about the word woman? When it's made plural, it becomes women. So that's a plural noun that doesn't end in S, but to make it possessive, it's apostrophe S. So don't confuse that. Women's is more than one woman, and then this is possession, such as the women's dresses. And the only time where we only add an apostrophe at the end is when we have a plural noun that ends in S, and you add the apostrophe after the S. So let's go back to our waitress. Let's make it more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. So we have waitresses, and we add the apostrophe at the end of the S. And so this might be something like all the waitresses' orders were late leaving the kitchen. And you can see that not only do we have waitresses, but we also have orders. So we've got more than one waitress, more than one order. I trust that makes sense. Let's move on. Take a look at self-assessment A and then listen to my audio answers and see if you can master this before moving on. You may pause this video. Let's talk about compound nouns. Let's say you have a word like a vice president or a senior executive or a brother-in-law. To make this possessive, you want to make the last word in the compound possessive. So this is different from when you made plurals. For example, if I had two brothers-in-law, that means it's plural. But in this case, I have maybe only one brother-in-law, and I'm talking about his or her house or condo or whatnot, so it's brother-in-laws or editor-in-chiefs, that kind of thing. Let's take a look at vice presidents, senior executives. Again, we want to make the last word in the compound possessive, and if the last word ends in S, like vice presidents, that's where we add the apostrophe. Hopefully this makes sense. Let's take a look at these. Let's say we're talking in this sentence about one attorney or attorney's opinion. Is it this one or is it this one? Well, if it's one attorney, then we know it's A-T-T-O-R-N-E-Y apostrophe S. It's this one. What about an officer? One officer, apostrophe S, his statement. This one. But what if we're talking about three boys? Well, first we would make it plural, B-O-Y-S, and now we know we've got a plural now that ends in S. This one. Three boys, bicycles. What about children if we have several children? Well, children is already plural. So the answer is this one, apostrophe S. It's one of those plural nouns that doesn't end in S. This right here actually isn't even a word. You'd never see that because children is already plural and it doesn't end in S. What about 4 ladies and their coats? Well, first, hopefully you're not thinking this is the answer, so it's between this one and this one. If we know how to make 4 ladies plural, L-A-D-I-E-S, and we're talking about their coats, it's simply a matter of saying add that apostrophe on the end of the S. So the important thing is to always ask, are you talking about one or more than one? Have I made my plural correctly? Once you've made your plural correctly, move on and make it possessive. And the only time you're adding an apostrophe at the end of the S is when you have a plural that ends in S. In every other scenario, you're adding an apostrophe S. So let's take a look. Like we just said, we talked about ladies' coats and officers' statement and boys' bicycles. All of those are correct. That should make sense. But don't get confused with things like this. Our mothers have gone back to school. See, there's no possession here. Mothers is not necessarily, we're not necessarily referring to the possessive here because they're not owning anything. So the choice is here. And then in this one, the students are late today. We're just talking plural. Just this. We don't need this one. But in this case, this one's kind of interesting. This car is my brother's. It's as if you're saying this car is the car of my brother. And even though brothers appears at the end, you do actually need the apostrophe. It's like saying this is my brother's car. These books are not my friends, or these are not my friend's books. Even though friend appears at the end of the sentence, you actually do need the apostrophe. So a little tricky, but I think you can figure that out. Let's take a look just for fun at how important it is to have your apostrophe in the right place. Tell me if you think these mean the same thing. The teacher stood in the doorway and called the students' names, the names of the students. Hey John, hey Mary, hey Sue, come to class. Versus this, the teacher stood in the doorway and called the students' names. No apostrophe, no possession. So basically I'm calling you names like, hey booger face, hey butthead. Just the placement of the apostrophe completely changes the meaning. So we do want to get this right. Something I don't think your book spends enough time on but is important is that for some reason in English, time periods actually take possession, whether it's hours, days, weeks, or whatnot. So in this case, a day's journey, this is actually correct. A week's pay, this is actually correct. 2 hours delay. Tell me what you think is correct. It's 2 hours. Make it first plural. If it ends in S, add an apostrophe at the end. That should make you say, this is correct. 2 weeks salary. You should immediately know this is correct. 2 weeks later and 6 years ago, ooh, no possession at all, right? No possession at all. We don't have a noun. This is an adverb. This is also an adverb. In this case, these are all nouns. Well, let me see. This is an adverb and this is an adverb. And these here were all nouns. So take a moment to really familiarize yourself with time periods because those can be tricky on the upcoming quizzes and exam. Names can get difficult, and as we went over in the plural noun section, we talked about how to make last names plural. The Glovers, the Valdezes, the Harrises, the Youngs, the Addisons. You can see these are the ones that become difficult because we have to make them plural by adding ES. So don't forget that then when we're talking about the Addisons, their plans, this would be their plans. And for the Harrises, this would be the invitation. And for the Youngs, this would be the reception. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's take a look at joint and separate ownership, and I want you to tell me how many fathers are in each sentence. The first one, Susan and Randy's father is here, and then Susan and Randy's fathers are here. Well, hopefully you say, well, father, one, that's one father, and that's two fathers. But more important is that this probably indicates that Susan and Randy are brother and sister. There's one father, and they have joint ownership. They both have that father. But in this case, they have different fathers. Perhaps they're not brother and sister. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's move on. Let's talk about same kind of thing. How many owners? How many agencies? Irwin and Vicky's agencies are located in Southern California versus the next one. Irwin's and Vicky's agencies are located in Southern California. Well, I think that we can conclude because we say agencies and agencies, there's definitely more than one agency. But in this case, Irwin and Vicky own them together. Perhaps they're business partners, husband and wife. Either way, together they own more than one agency. Here, they own them separately. More than one agency, they own them separately. Do you see the difference? Very important. I want also to spend some time with gerunds, as I don't think your book spends enough time describing these, and these are some of my favorite questions. So if we first need to answer what is a gerund, it's an ing word that looks like a verb, but it's actually a noun. And we'll later get to how we work possessive with these. But something like eating and drinking in the classroom is allowed. Well, even though these look, eating and drinking, as if they're verbs, they're not. They're nouns. Eating is allowed. Drinking is allowed. She allowed Natividad's eating and drinking in the classroom. So notice in this case that these are the gerunds, and if I'm talking about someone here, I'm actually using some possession that I'm allowing this person's eating and drinking. Proofreading these documents is helpful, but Carlos's proofreading is especially helpful. So notice how Carlos actually is owning the proofreading because it is a noun. Or his proofreading is helpful. Notice that this is a possessive right here. So in this case, I was glad for him proofreading the documents, or I was glad for his proofreading the documents. Well, by following our rule, proofreading being a noun and it's a gerund, we need the possessive form, not the objective form, but the possessive form. I was glad for his proofreading the documents. Keep that in mind. That can get tricky later to use this right here. Or if you're resenting the actual person, then you want to use that right here. Let's talk about this. Do you mind me smoking or do you mind my smoking? Well, which are you more upset about? Are you upset at me? You don't like me, especially when I'm smoking, and when I'm smoking, you don't like me? That's what that means. Versus this one means, no, you like me no matter what. You like me. It's my smoking that you don't like. That's why we need the possessive here. Do you mind my smoking? Or do you mind Mary's smoking? It's easier when we actually see the noun with the possession. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's move on. I want you to give self-assessment B a try. See if you can master this, and you may pause this video. And you've reached the end. Hopefully this has helped you understand possessives. Thank you.